Hey, and welcome back to ConTinual. I'm your host, Jim Nettles, and tonight we're going to be talking about holidays in science fiction and fantasy. Before we dive down that rabbit hole, we're going to go around the room and have everybody introduce themselves. So, John, I'm going to start with you.
Hey there. I am John Hartness, and I am the biggest Grinch ever. I don't care about any of your holidays. So I just want to show up and tell people to buy my new Quincy Harker book. I am the author of multiple series, including the Black Knight Chronicles, Bubba the Monster Hunter, and Quincy Harker Demon Hunter. And I'm the founder and publisher of Falstaff Books, as well as being a cast member of the Authors and Dragons actual play podcast and one of the organizers of the Saga Genre Fiction Writing Conference and Authors and Dragons Con, because I didn't have enough to do.
Dan?
My name's Dan Jolley. I've been writing in various genres for 30 some years now. Started out in comic books. I co-created the current version of Firestorm for DC. Written for video games such as Dying Light and Transformers War for Cybertron. I've been writing books for several years now, several of them for Mr. Hartness there.
Larry?
Hello, I'm Larry Martin. I'm an author and co-author with Gail Z. Martin. We write in a number of genres. I have two under my own name, Salvage Rat, which is science fiction, and The Splintered Crown, which is a portal fantasy. And then we have numerous co-written books, many with Falstaff, Spell, Salt, and Steel, the Joe Max series, and the Wasteland Marshall series. And we also have a steampunk series, Storm and Fury, and Iron and Blood.
So before we go too far down the rabbit hole, and John, you're on mute.
I keep trying to use the spacebar thing to mute so that you guys don't hear me when I fart or the chair squeaks or whatever, but I forget, and I keep wanting to be a smart aleck. So just keep reminding me I'm on mute, and I'll occasionally pop in and say things like, just like everyone on the show tonight, Larry, as in addition to myself and Dan, have a new release coming this month. That's December, for those of you who are watching this in the future.
Add it to your to be read pile, and if you're really lucky, supply chain might get it to you before Christmas.
If you sign up for the Falstaff Books newsletter, you'll never miss a new release, and you can get all of those things to your e-reader of choice, like that thing you carry everywhere and spend way too much time staring at family gatherings. So instead of surfing Twitter, you could be reading one of our new books.
Fast and easy. So diving down the rabbit hole, I'm going to start with the Grinch for this one, so he's going to actually have to pay attention to the question. Since we're coming into the end of the year holiday season, and everybody's got their favorite shows, the things that define for them, like for me, I am the Grinch. I should have worn my shirt tonight, but I didn't. It's not holiday season until I've seen my Grinch, and the first 2/3 of that show are fantastic, and then he grows his heart 2 sizes too small or something, and that it's over and done. What's the one show or episode or something in genre that it doesn't really kick off this time of year for you until you've seen it, heard it, whatever the case, read it, whatever the case may be? So, John, what is it for you?
I mean, it's not really Christmas until Hans Gruber falls off the Nakamura Tower. It just, the reason for the season is, is killing Alan Rickman. So yeah, Die Hard. But really for me, the thing that makes me feel the most Christmassy, the most roasty chestnutty is Fairy Tale of New York by the Pogues, which is my very favorite Christmas carol ever. Also a fantastic video featuring Rob Lowe as a drunken New York City cop, or maybe just a drunk, or I don't know, I don't remember. But yeah, that's it. Fairy Tale of New York and Die Hard.
How about you, Dan?
My wife and I just recently rewatched Grimm, which for all of its flaws is one of my favorite TV series ever. It's the only TV series that has ever made me even consider writing fan fiction. And they have one of my favorite episodes is the Christmas episode where Monroe the Blutbod decorates his house for Christmas. It's a whole thing. I can't say that triggers the Christmas feeling every year, but this year that's what did it for me.
How about you, Larry?
I don't know that we have anything in particular. It varies by year. This year we started out with the Christmas Carol. We have numerous versions this year. We happen to start with the Muppets.
So looking at holidays, I mean, because one of the things that unites and creates people and cultures is the idea of what holidays they've got. And, a lot, pretty much every holiday we see somewhere in genre fiction, if it's not one of our modern holidays, it's based on somebody's holiday in more than likely in some way, shape, or form. And before we started on this, we were talking about one of my favorite things I used to torture people, which is, of course, the Star Wars Holiday Special and Life Day, which makes everybody groan every time, and it's always a glorious thing to see. So is there any kind of a holiday you've seen in genre fiction that may not be real, but may or may not be a corollary to what we've got, that really resonates for you and helps cement the story or cement the culture for you? So Dan, since I see you studying hard for this one, we'll start there.
I got nothing. I'm drawing a big fat blank right now. Pass. Pick on someone else.
But I'm embarrassed to say I can't really think of anything from other stories I've read. I can think of ones from our own, and probably the one that comes to mind the most is from the Chronicles of the Necromancer series, which is Winter's Tide, which is really, an end of year festival that sort of you can resonate with almost in any kind of genre, because it's not a religious holiday. It's truly an end of planting season celebration.
How about you, John? And yeah, you're still on mute.
Nope, still there.
And still on mute.
Shut up. Technology's hard. Because I had to look up what it was called. Because for me, it's Mercenary Day in the Borderlands video game franchise. One, because I think that the Borderlands franchise can serve as the answer to literally any question about any level of genre. And two, because it's funny as hell. So, I mean, the Borderlands series of games are just all very smartly written, and as they've been going for now 3 versions of the game, plus a pre-sequel, plus I think a dozen different pieces of downloadable content, they've had to come up with ways to expand the universe and ground it in things we can relate to. So they created this holiday that is a wintertime holiday where people put bombs and guns and loot under a tree and blow things up, because it's Borderlands and that's what you do. You blow things up. So that's one I really like.
Sounds like home to me.
Explosions.
Blow things up. So have you incorporated, and I know, Larry, you sort of started down this path, have you actually incorporated holidays into any of your own work, especially if it's more current stories and whatnot? But if you have, why did you pull in that particular holiday? What did it mean for you? What did it mean for the characters, and pulling all those kinds of pieces together? So Larry, I'll actually start with you on that one.
Well, if you're familiar with my writing and Gail's, you'll understand that one that frequently gets pulled in is a variation of All Saints Day, All Hallows Eve. Typically, those are in many of our stories, any time where the veil is thin and the spirits pass through. So even that's another one that was even in the Chronicle series, which was Haunts, which we even do a podcast yearly on, which again, the spirits connecting with others, that one has been in. And in the modern urban fantasy, we actually do use all the current holidays as well. just depending upon the season and where we are in the cycle with the books and where did we leave them off last.
So John, how about you?
Similar to what Gail and Larry do, it depends on the time. It depends on when I'm planning on publishing the book. When I was doing a lot of Bubba the Monster Hunter short stories, I did a holiday episode every year for the first couple of years I was working in that series. So it gave me the opportunity to, well, to kill the elf on a shelf. Because
You should.
because he's creepy. And then in one of the Shingles books that I write with the Authors and Dragons crew, I animated the elf on a shelf and got him laid.
You must like him more these days.
Well, there were a lot of explosions and hilarity involved in getting him to the finish line. So yeah, elf on a shelf with a rocket launcher. So I tend to go for the ridiculous when I'm adding holidays in. I haven't worked them into any of the more serious stuff that I write. I tend to leave it for comedy because there are so many pieces of our culture that are tied to holidays, and they are such touchstones for large swaths of the reading community that it's easy to parody them that way, and you know that you'll get a lot of targets.
Have you worked in holidays into the Authors and Dragons universe?
Yeah, several times. I've only done one, but we do a holiday Shingles every year, and there's a holiday episode or a series of holiday episodes on the Authors and Dragons podcast every year. We just kicked it off. It should be releasing tomorrow, the first episode of the holiday arc for Authors and Dragons. So yeah, we've done that quite a bit. Mine was, God, I can't remember what that one was called. Jingle My Balls. That's what it was. Yeah, that's the Shingles I wrote about elf on a shelf getting laid with a rocket launcher. But then we've done the little matchstick girl. We've done R.E. Carr just did one called Cluck You for Thanksgiving. So yeah, we're all about the holiday cheer in the Shingles verse. We love holidays.
And it's all family friendly. So
depending on your family.
How about you, Dan?
Well, until very recently, I haven't really written anything that involved the creation of a whole new world or a whole new culture. I've been primarily writing science fiction, but it's been really grounded science fiction. I don't know if this is an actual term or not, but instead of urban fantasy, it's urban sci-fi. So for the most part, it's just been holidays that we have in the real world because almost everything that I do takes place in the real world. But coming out on Thursday of this week, which is, I guess you're not watching it right now, but it's December 9th, is my first ever epic fantasy novel, which is called The Rune Master Homicide. And it's the first in the series, and it's the first time that I've created a whole new world, and especially a whole new culture. The main character is a member of a non-human species, and so I've been building up they're called Sethids, S-E-T-H-Y-D, and I've been building the Sethid culture. The thing about it, though, is that the Sethids are 100% secular, based on rationality, and so you don't see any holidays in the first book, but in the second one we'll get farther into the culture, and they have two major ones. One is a week in the winter right before the winter gets really harsh, and it's basically everyone getting together and saying, hope you survive, hope you make it through the winter. And the second one is a week in the spring when it's clear that everyone who's going to survive has survived. And then it's, hey, glad you survived, good to see you again. I haven't given them official names yet, but it's probably like, I don't know, Hope Week and Survivor Week. That's not the final name, but those are the concepts. And I really, I think that's kind of where the whole winter celebration maybe originally came from. Saturnalia, Christmas. It's really people who are thinking, we might not make it through this winter, so we better get together and have a good time and say whatever we have to say to each other.
So looking at holidays, I mean, because again, it's very formative. Do you find, for whatever holidays you've worked with, and I think this builds on what you were talking about, Dan, is how that builds up the story? Does that give you the ability to ramp up the conflict? Does that give you the ability to ramp up with, whether it's the counting clock, whether it is, the pressures? Does it let you play differently with how the relationships work? So, Dan, we'll go ahead and go with you on that one.
Well, I mean, I have to continue talking about the Sethids because that's the only holiday that I'm like actually working into a story. But sort of the general culture of them was inspired by the populace of Finland. The Finns really appreciate personal space. They don't really have much of a concept of small talk, for example. They're totally fine with isolation. And the two feast weeks that they've got there necessitate people, members of the species, coming together who ordinarily wouldn't. And in that way, I think it's a lot like a lot of just the regular holidays that we deal with, where we know we're going to have to see people that maybe we don't ordinarily associate with, maybe we don't want to associate with, but hey, we got to go and we got to put a good face on it. And so, yeah, I think some conflict will be arising from that.
Alcohol was involved. So how about you, Larry?
I think for the most part, holidays in our worlds and in the books where we've used them have been part of the world building. It's the background tapestry of the events that are happening and the characters' interaction as they work within what's happening around them. I think the closest we've gotten to something more significant is we did use Krampus in A Deadly Curiosity stories, where obviously a little bit more directly tied to the holiday. But in general, it's the setting. We haven't used it as a character builder or a conflict in any of the ones I can think of. And the other thing I'd say is oftentimes holiday stories for us have also been in anthologies, or short stories are prompted because that was the prompt for, can you set a story in this world at the holiday so we can put a book together of holiday stories, whether that's Halloween, Christmas, whatever. So it may include the cast, but again, it's the background, not the story.
How about you, John?
For me, I tend to use it to create conflict because, just like Dan said, holidays are very fraught because you are having to deal with human beings, and dealing with human beings is a pain in the ass. And dealing with family can be far, far worse than dealing with humans. For those of you who think that, well, your family is human, you haven't met my family. So I tend to also use it as setting, but in the holiday stories that I write, the setting provides or creates conflict by its nature and by the way that we have to interact with events and people.
So looking at some of the stories we see in popular culture that are playing with and using holidays, if you were looking to kind of adopt some of those strategies, like right now we've been watching Hawkeye, and Hawkeye uses Christmas as the ticking clock, to set for the story and setting the pace, and it's a big part of the conflict. With some of the holiday movies, shows, whatever it is that you're watching, what are the elements that really pull you in, that the holiday is core to the story, it's core to what pulls you into it, and that it kind of pulls and influences, and maybe something you'd want to work with or use, or it's something that just really attracts you to the story itself. So Larry, I'll go to you. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just going to jump on this one because I have an idea, and that's what happens. There's a couple of things that Hawkeye is doing very well that are core to the idea of the story, and one of them is the ticking clock. And yes, that's ever present as he's trying to get home to his family before Christmas. I can't spoil anything because the whole rest of the series isn't out yet, so I don't know enough to spoil, so piss off. He's trying to get home. But the separation from family is also really a big deal in episode 3 that just dropped last week. And I think that kind of separation or isolation at a time when you expect to be with family, friends, loved ones of whatever stripe, that's something that I think is very useful for creating conflict, in addition to the ticking time bomb. That imposed separation between your characters can be very useful. You can put it in a frame of holidays, but just as a trope, that's really strong and provides a good motivation for your character. Or it can provide conflict between your characters if one of your characters wants to go home for Christmas and the other one of your characters hates their family and never ever wants to see any of them ever again. Then you've got not just you've got backstory, you've got conflict, you've got desires, you've got thwarted desires. You can get a lot of layers out of that. So I think that that's another thing that Hawkeye is doing very well, that I really like, and I like that show quite a lot.
And the other thing I think that they've done well with it, without any spoilers, is the conflict that they've introduced and the stress on him, because of course having the family back post snap, and showing that no, I really do, want to be back with the family and treasure that. So I think that conflict of all the missed Christmases and missed holidays and missed life, and getting the family back, I think you see something in him as a character you've not seen before.
It's also the first time they've referenced his hearing loss, which is such a key part of his character in later iterations, and I feel like they're doing it very well on the show. It's very rare in media that you see someone who is hard of hearing who is not necessarily completely deaf, because there are gradations of hearing loss, and not everyone is stone deaf. Some people just have to pick where they sit at the dinner table carefully.
How about you, Dan?
Well, I think the converse, the opposite of what John was just saying, can also be a source of conflict. And it makes me think of something that one of my first editors back at DC Comics taught me, Joey Cavalieri, who was a very formative force on me as a young writer. That one of the things that makes a hero is someone who cannot do something and yet they must. And holidays, in very similar ways to family reunions and funerals put people together who would not ordinarily be together. And sometimes I really enjoy seeing stories of reconciliations. To people who have been estranged for whatever reason, for however long, and when they absolutely have to be around each other, they figure out a way to settle their differences, to figure out what went wrong in the first place and maybe set it right. August Osage County, the Paul Bettany movie Uncle Frank. Those aren't about holidays; they're about other family gatherings. But I think it still applies. It's a nice thing to see.
So you like the Hallmark Christmas movies where the estranged sisters come home to the small town and they each find a hunky guy in plaid who owns a Christmas tree farm. Okay.
That's one of the four plots. Yes, the four Hallmark plots. There may only be two. That's one of them, yes.
You know, Mark Twain said that there's only two plots. Somebody comes to town or somebody leaves town. That's all you got. And, you know, he was a pretty smart guy, that Twain.
Mm-hmm. And Dan Jolley is available to write your Hallmark scripts now. Hallmark in space.
Well, yeah. Call me up.
Hallmark Storm.
How about you, Larry?
And if they came to Cabot Cove, they're going to kill someone.
For real.
I think the holidays give you an opportunity to do some character building and some delving into backstory history, whether it's triggers or hurts or motivation, because, and I don't think I'm speaking uniquely for my own experience, but holidays have baggage and things have happened, and each person comes away with a whole different perspective on what holidays mean to them and what their experiences were and what they expect. So when you're dealing with characters, you get to explore all that and make it part of the story, or get to reveal something about the character because of what they experienced or they didn't experience and how they interact with others, trying to deal with the baggage.
So is there...
No, I mean, I totally agree with what Larry's saying, because you wouldn't think that as a fat guy, I would hate Thanksgiving, but I hate Thanksgiving. I have a sense of existential dread surrounding that holiday because multiple really traumatic things in my life happened within the week of Thanksgiving, either right before or right after. So I love being around my family most of the time. I love eating because my family is full of great cooks. But that week leading up to Thanksgiving, I am almost more impossible than normal to be around. And it goes for the week after too, just because history has taught me that I'm always on edge because something's going to be awful. So yeah, that baggage, that triggers or whatever however you want to refer to them, it's real, and using that to help develop character can be really strong.
Well, kind of building on that is the fact of holidays may mean in story as in life, you're pulling people in you don't see often, but who can have either a lot of history with you or a lot of influence on you, whether you want to admit it or not, you know, for good, for bad, and going with that baggage. Is that something you're pulling into story? And is that something that actually can ratchet up to kind of a next level or help explain who your characters are? Because you get to see maybe that under the curtain for them. You get to learn something about who they are as a character and as a person and what their influences in the story that also then might reveal more about why they do some of the things that they do. So is that something you would play with or have played with in some way, shape, or form? Or even thought through?
I haven't played with that as a device, but you certainly can. And another way that you can work holidays and people's reactions to holidays into it is the disconnect between who a character was and who a character is. We all, the four of us all live in the South. So there's a certain level of interaction with people that consists of the words, last time I saw you, you were this high. And especially if you're someone like Larry, who's 17 feet tall, it's been a long time since he was this high, man. But
It only happens at funerals now.
Well, in
and you're
your
like,
case,
I'm the
John,
same height as this guy. He's just lying down.
and that
But
can have
one of
different connotations too with how high were you the last time they saw you. So I mean,
that's a different conversation, and that happens at my family gatherings. But anyway, my siblings were born and went to high school in the 70s. But what it gets you is that kind of what was versus what is, and maybe your character wants to convince people that they're not that person anymore. Maybe your character doesn't care. Maybe your character wants people to still think they are that person they were the last time they were in this environment. So it does give you a lot of places to go and things to poke and prod at.
Yeah, somebody who shows up, so somebody who isn't a part of the normal scenario in a place. Like often just that character serves as the inciting incident or the call to adventure. And like something that I talk about at panels at various places, crafting a compelling character. And like it's slightly different point, but what I was saying was any character that is the absolute best at something, no matter what else there is about them, they're going to be compelling in some way. And the example that I used was, it doesn't matter if it's a battle of the bands or a fencing competition or a quilting bee. If there's a character that shows up, and when they show up, everyone else goes, oh shit. That's going to be like an arresting character. That's going to be something that takes the focus. And just the presence of like a cousin, an estranged cousin who shows up after 15 years. You know, the family has been carrying on just fine without the cousin for 15 years, and then they show up on their motorcycle or whatever. And it causes that kind of reaction, and maybe the family doesn't actually say, oh shit, but they're thinking it. And like immediately that draws the reader in. Why are they all reacting that way? What's going to happen?
And then 17 movies later, you find out they were a Skrull all along.
It all comes back to Marvel, doesn't it?
how about you, Larry? Anything there for?
We haven't used holidays a lot in most of the works we've done. I'd say the closest is in the Chronicles with Haunts, where that is pivotal to the story because the main character is a necromancer and it's connecting with ancestors and ghosts. But for the rest of the books, we really haven't used holidays a lot or used it as a character development tool. I'd say the closest next thing is in the Morgan Bryce works, where it's an LGBTQ world and it's found family versus blood family and the conflicts that have happened in the past. That is a key element in those stories.
So, I mean, because again, at the end of the day, all stories are about the characters. It's not necessarily even as much about the story and the plot, it's how they react to it and what their influences are. So if you think about some of the other holiday shows, holiday episodes, things like that, are there influences you see that really draw you in, that are the thing that when you see them in something, you're like, okay, this is the part of the story that really helps you connect to them? Or is the thing that points out and you go, aha, now I know why that person's an asshole, or whatever the case may be for you? Is there something, whether it's a favorite series, whether it's a favorite movie, going back even to the idea of Die Hard as a Christmas movie, there is a lot of trope in there. There's a lot of built up family drama that's going on in there as well. So is there anything in there that really pulls you in? Is there something that tells you or that really makes a difference in that kind of a story that the holidays maybe help you ramp up or crank up on?
I got nothing.
I can't think of anything that pulls me in per se, and maybe writing and editing has ruined me because now I tend to watch both movies as well as read. And I'm looking for, okay, where did they take that from? What have they based this on? So now I'm more apt to say, this is the Christmas Carol trope, or this is It's a Wonderful Life twist. So I'm more apt to look for, okay, what is the theme they're going for? Where did they get it? Because many of them are the same story, but they're told in a different way. And so I tend to look for, okay, where are we going with this? And what's your inspiration for this story? And how do you do it?
What'd you steal to start from?
Yeah.
What's your favorite to see or play with?
I like the Christmas Carol rewrite trope. I've done it. Our friend Darren has done it. His was more serious. Mine was less so. But I think that there's a lot you can play around with in that self-realization journey in a compressed timeline, because that's essentially what it is. It's a Scrooge McDuck, this is your life and you're a dick, so fix it. And it all has to get done in, I don't know, 12 hours, 14 hours, 27 hours, however long a night is. So yeah, I like that. I like to play around with that one.
How about you, Dan?
I still got nothing. Pass.
I haven't played around with any, but the other one I like, and maybe it's a little more sappy, but the concept of It's a Wonderful Life, of what would it be like without you and what have you contributed? You just really don't realize what you've given and what you've done.
Is there a particular version of that you like that really speaks to you more than any?
Not that I can think of on the spot.
Well, since we are coming in that holiday period, let's talk a little bit about those new releases so that people can be out there stuffing the stockings with the new books, or at least get them on the Kindles. So John, I'm gonna make you go last. What have you got? What have you guys got coming out, Larry? And you're on mute.
Yeah, my turn. So next up is the next Wasteland Marshals book, which is Shutdown Crew, coming out from Falstaff Books, which
on
is
on the 28th of December.
Which is about post-apocalyptic urban fantasy. World's pretty much been destroyed. All the infrastructure's gone. You've got two U.S. Marshals who are doing their best to keep things together. And oh, by the way, the supernatural has now come back to life.
If you really enjoyed the TV show Jericho, but thought it would be cool if the Winchester brothers were the leads, here you go.
Yeah.
How about you, Dan? Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
I was
Larry.
going to say, we have one more also coming out fairly soon, which is the next one in the Assassin series called Exile's Quest, which will be coming out probably in audio first. That's going to be after the first of the year.
How about you, Dan?
The new release that I mentioned earlier, I think my picture's flipped around, so this is going to be backwards, but the Rune Master Homicide, currently available in print, not quite yet available in ebook, but that's going to change on the 9th of December.
So long before you've seen this.
Yes. So yeah, currently available in every kind of format. And it is my first ever fantasy novel. It's about it's an original setting, and it's about the first non-human member of the Imperial Criminal Investigation Ministry. This empire has been using rune-based magic to solve crimes for the last 300 years. And the story begins when something begins to deteriorate that magic. So the first ever non-human member, the first ever Sethid member, is a woman named Niska Stonegate. And she is the one who has to begin introducing actual detective procedures to the ministry to help them solve crimes, because when the magic quits working, none of them know what to do about it. And it's also incredibly dark and violent, and I'm really happy with it.
And you, John? It's like well, today's a Tuesday, so you've got what, 3-4 books coming out today?
Nope. We usually avoid Tuesdays because New York does Tuesdays. So I try to only release on Tuesdays when there's either something else releasing that week, Dan, or if it's somebody who has enough additional visibility to be able to carry the release, because a lot of our authors are newer and don't necessarily have the market penetration that Dan or Gail and Larry or some of our other authors have. So because we have another release already scheduled for Thursday, which is Rune Master Homicide, my book released today, and it's called Comes a Reckoning. It is the 8th book in the Quincy Harker Demon Hunters series, and this is the culmination of a 3-novel, 2-novella interwoven story arc between the Bubba the Monster Hunter series and the Quincy Harker Demon Hunter series that I've been working through for about 2 years now. So it's the culmination of a couple of years worth of storyline, and I'm anxiously awaiting the responses to see if I stuck the landing. My editor liked it, so we'll see if the readership does as well. I think it's pretty good. And I blow up John Scalzi. I think that should be worth a couple thousand sales right there. I blow up John Scalzi in a Scalzi's burrito truck. Come on. What else do you want for Christmas?
I can see the marketing now. So before we get out of here, what's the one thing, because last year's holidays were even more challenging than usual. So what's the one thing you are kind of looking forward to this year's holidays, other than book sales? What's the one thing you really are kind of looking forward to this year? Something you're ready to go through? Just that one thing that you guys are ready for. So Dan, I'll let you go first with this one too.
All the food.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that we are all from the South, and we're, I think, maybe a little bit more food based than maybe some other cultures. And yeah, I am going to have to work off an awful lot of family cooking. Okay. So it's not a current release, but another Falstaff book of mine that's out. I have a trilogy called the Grey Widow Trilogy, and I'm currently working on a pilot script that there's a little bit of interest in, and we're going to be trying to develop. And that has been so all-consuming for me. It's like I'm getting that done, and the holiday is sort of conflated in my head. And in January, I'm going to be able to breathe an enormous sigh of relief that everything is done. Can't wait for that.
You sweet summer child. Everything is done.
Everything is done with the script, with the
okay.
Of the script. And I have to write book 2 of the.
I was gonna say, I can email your ass a contract that proves not everything is done.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's never done.
That script will be done, and I have literally forgotten what day it was working on that thing. I'm ready to put it to bed.
Do you hate it yet, though? That's the important question.
No, I got to get notes back from my manager before I hate it.
about you, Larry? What are you and Gail up to?
So this year we get the entire family home for Christmas, which is exciting after so much time in quarantine. And so I'm also looking forward to baking and cooking because I enjoy that more than the eating part. So I'm going to load them up while they're here.
I'm going over to Larry's. I've eaten his cooking. I'm just going to crash.
You're welcome to.
And it has nothing to do with the fact you're publishing them. It had nothing at all. So anyway, well, before we get out of here, do we want to go around the room, let everybody know, where to find you, website, social media, pushing that last release, or maybe that holiday release that everybody needs to have, to sit around the fire and read to the family. Jingle My Balls is the perfect one to read to the kids before they go to bed on Christmas Eve. So, John, we'll start with you.
Well, you can find all of my Falstaff releases at falstaffbooks.com. You can find information about my Black Knight Chronicles releases at johnhartness.com. I'm on social media as the thrillingly original handle of @JohnHartness pretty much everywhere, because I got onto social media before the other people with my name got onto social media, so they don't get to have it. Meh. Yeah, and buy Harker 8, Order Comes a Reckoning, and get, for those people in your life who need to just lighten the fuck up, there's my one. Jingle My Balls.
Dan?
Everything to do with me can be found at danjolley.com, and that's Jolley with an E before the Y. All of my books, all of my social media links, everything. Plus, if you sign up for my newsletter, you get a free short story about a silver alloy robot built by Nikola Tesla to fight werewolves.
Larry?
You can find everything about me at larrynmartin.com. It's also the same as ascendantkingdoms.com. We share a site, so all of our social media links, all of our Facebook groups, everything is there, and you can start. And it also has all the links to all the books in various bookstore options.
And I've had the pleasure of being your host this evening, Jim Nettles. And of course, you can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentials.net, continualconvention.com. And occasionally I do show up on Facebook in the hive of company that is Twitter and, Instagram and wherever else I happen to show up. So happy holidays, everybody. Get out there and start working on those holiday stories as I nail the mic.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye, y'all.